Picture the scene. October 13th, 2025, Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. More than 20 world leaders gathered under the desert sun. Cameras from major broadcasters trained on a single table. A historic peace agreement about to be signed. The kind of moment that will be replayed in historical documentaries for generations. However, there's something wrong with this image. One chair remains empty. The chair everyone expected to see filled. The chair that arguably should have been the most important. Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, the man whose nation is at the epicenter of this agreement, is not present. You will be shocked to learn the 4 discoveries about this event. Discovery 1. The last-minute invitation. Here's something most people don't know. Netanyahu wasn't on the initial guest list. Egypt, as the host country, didn't extend him an invitation. Think about it, an Israeli-Palestinian peace summit, and the Israeli leader isn't included. This reveals everything about Egypt's calculations. They knew his presence would be complicated, but Trump had other plans. Early on October 13th, the same day as the summit, Trump was in Israel, engaging in personal diplomacy, face-to-face meetings, the kind of relationship building Trump loves. During this visit, something crucial happened. Trump and Netanyahu had a private conversation. Not in a conference room, not in front of cameras, but inside the Beast, the presidential limousine, one of the most secure and private spaces in the world. We don't have a transcript, but according to multiple reports, Trump made his proposal. He encouraged Netanyahu to go to Sharm el-Sheikh, make history, meet Abbas for the first time since 2015, and show the world that peace is possible. And Netanyahu reportedly agreed right there in the limousine. Yes. Trump, ever the negotiator, immediately picked up the phone. He called President al-Sisi directly, not through diplomatic channels, not through advisors. Trump to Sisi, one president to another. Netanyahu is coming. Extend the formal invitation. And Sisi complied. Within hours, the Egyptian presidency made a public announcement. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will participate in the Sharm el-Sheikh summit. Imagine the impact, the symbolism. The Israeli leader and the Palestinian president in the same setting, brokered by Trump, hosted by Egypt, with the entire Arab world watching. This could have been the most significant Israeli-Palestinian meeting in a decade. Analysts began preparing their headlines. Diplomats began assessing the implications. The world leaned forward. And then it all fell apart. Because between that call and the start of the summit, 3 different power plays were unfolding simultaneously, and Netanyahu found himself in an impossible position. Discovery 2. The announcement that shocked everyone. Just hours after Egypt announced Netanyahu's participation, his office released a statement. He would not attend. The reason? Time constraints due to Jewish holidays, specifically the proximity of Shemini Atzeret, which began that same evening, October 13th, and Simchat Torah, which would occur on October 15th. Traveling during this period, the statement explained, would be logistically difficult and inappropriate given the religious importance. On the surface, this seems reasonable. Religious observance is important. Scheduling conflicts happen. But here's the question. If this was genuinely about the festivities, why did Netanyahu initially agree to participate? Trump didn't surprise him. The date was known. The timing was clear. If religious observance were an absolute no-no, Netanyahu would have refused in the limousine. He wouldn't have allowed Trump to call Sisi. He wouldn't have allowed Egypt to make a public announcement. Something changed. Something happened in those few hours that made participation politically impossible. And if you believe it was just about the calendar, you're missing the real story. Because while Netanyahu's office was carefully crafting a statement on Jewish holidays, 3 separate leaders were making calls, issuing ultimatums, and drawing red lines that would force Netanyahu's hand. Let me show you what really happened. Finding 3, first reason, Erdogan's ultimatum. Let's talk about Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Erdogan isn't subtle. He's not a backroom diplomat who prefers quiet negotiations. When Erdogan has a problem, the world knows about it. And he had a big problem with Netanyahu's participation in this summit. The moment news leaked that Netanyahu might appear, Erdogan made his position crystal clear. If Netanyahu shows up, I'm leaving. Not just walking out of a session. Walking out as in boycotting the entire event, abandoning Trump's ceasefire celebration, publicly undermining the entire summit. Now you might think, okay, so Erdogan doesn't like Netanyahu. What's new? But this wasn't just theatrics. According to multiple reports, Erdogan's plane was literally circling over Sharm el-Sheikh before landing. Mid-flight, he was in direct communication with President al-Sisi, making absolutely certain that Netanyahu wouldn't be there. Picture this. The Turkish presidential plane, engines roaring, circling over Egyptian airspace, while Erdogan and Sisi discuss the guest list in real time. This isn't diplomacy. It's hostage negotiation, and Erdogan wasn't alone. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani reportedly made similar threats. Other Arab and Muslim leaders were watching, waiting to see if they needed to do the same. The calculation was brutal. If Netanyahu walked into that room, half the summit would walk out. Trump's greatest moment, his celebration of the ceasefire, his expansion of the Abraham Accords, his legacy-defining peace summit, would collapse into a diplomatic disaster. So Netanyahu had a choice: show up and trigger a mass stampede, or stay home and let the summit proceed. But here's the thing, Erdogan's ultimatum wasn't the only pressure Netanyahu was facing. Because while Arab leaders threatened to boycott from the outside, Netanyahu's own political coalition threatened to collapse from within. Discovery 4. The second real reason. Let's shift the focus to Jerusalem, to the Knesset, to Netanyahu's fragile coalition government. Netanyahu doesn't govern Israel with a comfortable majority. His coalition is a patchwork of right-wing parties, religious factions, and hardliners who view any engagement with the Palestinian Authority as a concession. And sitting in a room with Mahmoud Abbas, shaking Erdogan's hand, celebrating a ceasefire that many Israelis see as a victory for Hamas, that's not just politically risky. His base, the people who keep him in power, would see it as weakness, as capitulation, as trading Israeli security for a photo op with Trump. And his coalition partners would use this as leverage. Some might even threaten to leave the government, which could trigger early elections. Elections that Netanyahu might not win. Israeli opposition figures were not shy about this calculation. Yair Golan, leader of the Democrats' party, later condemned Netanyahu's decision, saying it was driven by narrow political interests. Translation: Netanyahu chose political survival over diplomatic progress. Now you might say, isn't that cynical? Isn't peace more important than politics? Sure, in theory. But Netanyahu has been in power for most of the last 2 decades, precisely because he understands how to read the environment, how to manage competing pressures, how to survive. And at that moment, survival meant staying home. But there's another layer to this, another factor that most people don't talk about publicly, and it involves the very country that invited Netanyahu. The third real reason: behind-the-scenes US-Israel coordination. This is where it gets really interesting. After Erdogan's threats became clear, after the domestic political backlash became obvious, something else happened behind the scenes. Consultations, not public statements, not press conferences, quiet, urgent conversations between US officials, Netanyahu's aides, and possibly the Trump team directly. They evaluated the scenarios. Netanyahu attends, mass exodus, summit collapses, Trump appears weak, US-Israel relations strained. Netanyahu doesn't attend, summit proceeds, ceasefire is endorsed, Trump claims victory, US-Israel alliance intact. The summit went ahead. the ceasefire was endorsed. Trump grabbed his headlines, and Netanyahu avoided a triple disaster: international humiliation, domestic outrage, and diplomatic chaos. This, my friends, is how modern diplomacy really works. The truth gets buried under calendar invitations. The real story hides behind religious observance, and everyone pretends it was all about logistics. But that empty chair told the real story. So the summit took place without Netanyahu. Trump and al-Sisi delivered their speeches. Mahmoud Abbas attended. Erdogan didn't leave in a huff. The ceasefire was formally endorsed. Cameras captured handshakes and smiles. On paper, it was a success. But here's what changed without Netanyahu in the room. Discovery 5. The prophetic implications: Gog, Magog, and the coming storm. Now, I want to tread carefully here because I'm not claiming to know God's exact timeline, but I think it's worth asking, what does this mean from a biblical perspective? And specifically, when I see Turkey's Erdogan threatening to leave if Israel shows up, when I see regional alliances forming against Israeli interests, when I see Israel increasingly isolated despite peace agreements, I can't help but think of Ezekiel 38 and 39, the prophecy of Gog and Magog. Because what happened on October 13th wasn't just a diplomatic spat, it was a preview, a small-scale rehearsal for something much bigger that Scripture says is coming. Let me show you what I mean. The ancient prophecy, written 2,600 years ago, Ezekiel was a prophet in Babylon around 593 BC. Israel had been conquered, the temple destroyed, the people scattered. And in the midst of that exile, God gave Ezekiel a vision of the distant future, a vision of a war that would come against Israel in the last days. Listen to Ezekiel 38, 1-6. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Behold, I am against you, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you back and put hooks in your jaws. I will bring you out against me, along with all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them dressed in fine apparel, a great company with shields and bucklers, all of them handling swords. I know those are a lot of old names, but here's what's absolutely striking. When you map these ancient territories onto modern nations, a pattern emerges. A pattern that looks exactly like the alliances forming right now. Let me break it down for you. Magog, Meshech, and Tubal. Most biblical scholars identify these as territories in what is now Russia and the former Soviet states. The Hebrew for prince and chief is Rosh, which many associate with Russia. Whether or not this is linguistically accurate, the geographic markers point north of Israel, exactly where Russia is. Persia. This one's easy. Ancient Persia is modern Iran. No debate, no ambiguity. Iran is explicitly named in this alliance. Ethiopia, Kush. In Ezekiel's time, Kush referred to the region south of Egypt, modern-day Sudan, and possibly parts of Ethiopia and Eritrea. Libya, Put. Another clear identification. The ancient territory of Put corresponds to modern Libya and possibly parts of North Africa. Gomer. Most scholars place this in what is now Turkey, or possibly parts of Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Togarmah. This is where it gets really interesting. Togarmah is consistently identified with the land that is now Turkey, specifically Eastern Turkey and the Caucasus region. Now, do you see the pattern? Russia, Iran, Turkey, Libya, Sudan, parts of Central Asia. This isn't a random collection of nations. This is a very specific coalition that Ezekiel saw 2,600 years ago, and each of these nations in our modern era has tensions with Israel. Each has hostile relationships, proxy conflicts, or political opposition to the Israeli state. Coincidence? Let's continue. Ezekiel's war. The setting now. Let's see what Ezekiel says this coalition will actually do. Ezekiel 38:8-9 continues. After many days you will be visited. In the latter years you will come to the land that has been recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many peoples on the mountains of Israel, which were desolate, but that people were brought out from among the nations, and they all will dwell safely. Then you will ascend, you will come like a storm, you will be like a cloud to cover the land, you and all your bands and many peoples with you. Let me highlight the key details. In recent years, this is end-time prophecy, not ancient history, something future. Land recovered from war, Israel was destroyed, scattered, disappeared for centuries, and then in 1948 recovered, reborn, gathered from among many peoples of nations around the world. They will dwell securely. Here's the specifics. This invasion occurs when Israel is dwelling securely, not in constant war, not under siege, but in a time of security, peace agreements, perhaps something like the Abraham Accords. You will come like a storm. This is a massive invasion, a coordinated assault, multiple nations, one target, Israel. And here's what Ezekiel says will motivate this attack. Ezekiel 38:11-12. And you shall say, I will go up against a land of unwalled villages. I will turn against those who are at rest and dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, bars, or gates, to take the spoil and to take the prey, to turn your hand against the desolate lands that are inhabited, and against the people gathered from the nations, who have acquired livestock and goods, who dwell in the midst of the land. The motivation: plunder, plunder, resources, wealth. Now think about modern Israel. A technological hub, natural gas discoveries off the coast, an economic powerhouse, a strategic location, valuable real estate in the most contested region on earth. Every detail Ezekiel describes, right down to the economic incentives, fits our current reality. Now here's where we connect back to October 13th. Remember Erdogan, remember his ultimatum. Remember his plane circling over Sharm el-Sheikh, refusing to land until he was sure Netanyahu wouldn't be there. This wasn't just personal animosity, it wasn't just political. Erdogan has consistently positioned Turkey as the leader of the Muslim world. He has rebuilt Ottoman-era mosques. He has cultivated relationships with Iran. He has positioned himself as a defender of Palestinian rights and the main opponent of Israeli aggression. And here's what should catch your attention. Turkey, identified in Ezekiel as Togarma, is a key player in the Gog-Magog coalition. Not a minor player, not a footnote, but a named participant in the invasion force. And now, today, Turkey's foreign policy is aligning exactly with what Ezekiel prophesied. Deteriorated relations with Israel, strengthened ties with Russia, cooperation agreements with Iran, positioning as a defender of the Palestinian cause, increasing military capacity and regional influence. Erdogan's behavior on October 13th, threatening, issuing ultimatums, refusing to share a room with Netanyahu, is not an isolated incident. It is part of a broader pattern of hostility toward Israel. The coalition Ezekiel described 2,600 years ago is forming right now. Not theoretically, not hypothetically, but actually forming. I will put hooks in your jaws. Here is one of the most fascinating parts of Ezekiel's prophecy. God says he will put hooks in the jaws of these nations and drag them into this conflict. Ezekiel 38:4. I will turn you around and put hooks in your jaws, and I will bring you out, and all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them dressed in finery, a great company with shields and bucklers, all of them handling swords. God himself orchestrates this invasion, not because he wants Israel destroyed, but because he will use this moment to demonstrate his power to the entire world. For here is what happens next in Ezekiel's prophecy. God himself defends Israel. Gog-Magog's invasion is unsuccessful. It fails spectacularly, not because of Israel's military might, but because God himself intervenes. Listen to Ezekiel 38:18-23. But it will come to pass in that day, when Gog comes against the land of Israel, declares the Lord God, that my wrath will be roused. For in my jealousy and in the fire of my fury I have spoken. Surely in that day there will be a great earthquake in the land of Israel, so that the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the beasts of the field, all the creeping things that creep on the earth, and all the people who are on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence. The mountains will be thrown down, the cliffs will crumble, and all the walls will fall to the ground. I will call for a sword against him on all my mountains, declares the Lord God. Everyone's sword will be against his brother. I will plead with him with pestilence and with bloodshed. I will rain on him and on his bands and on the many peoples who are with him an overflowing shower, great hailstones, fire and sulfur. So I will magnify myself and make myself great. I will sanctify myself, and I will make myself known in the eyes of many nations, and they will know that I am the Lord. Earthquake, confusion turning armies against each other, pestilence, supernatural hailstones, fire and brimstone. This isn't conventional warfare. This is divine intervention. And Ezekiel 39:12 says, it will take Israel 7 months to bury all the dead. 7 months. Think of the scale of destruction that implies.